The orange cat discovered a puppy struggling in the mud, but what it did next touched everyone's hearts. Eleanor Thompson, at 79, found solace in the predictable rhythms of her life in the rural community of Harmony Ridge, nestled in the heart of the Appalachian Mountains of West Virginia. Her days unfolded with a quiet grace, marked by the changing seasons, the simple pleasures of gardening, and the comforting presence of her late husband's books, which lined the walls of her cozy farmhouse. She didn't have any pets, and she didn't feel alone. Her nearest neighbor was almost a mile away, and the nearest town, a small collection of shops and a single gas station, was a 20-minute drive. Eleanor cherished the solitude, the peace and quiet of the countryside, the feeling of being connected to the land, to the rhythms of nature. She had a daughter, but far away. Her days were her own. She'd wake early, make a pot of coffee, and spend the morning hours tending her garden. A sprawling expanse of flowers, vegetables, and herbs that provided her with both sustenance and a deep sense of satisfaction. In the afternoons, she'd write letters to her daughter, Sarah, who lived in California, or simply sit on her porch swing, watching the clouds drift across the vast, blue sky. Meanwhile, miles away, across fields and through patches of woods, a young ginger cat named Patches navigated a very different world. Patches was a stray, a survivor, resourceful and independent. He had no human companions, no warm bed to sleep in, no regular meals to rely on. His life was a constant search for food, shelter, and safety. He was a handsome cat, with a thick coat of orange fur, striped with darker shades of ginger, and bright, intelligent green eyes. He was lean and muscular, his body honed by the challenges of his outdoor existence. He was wary of humans, having learned from experience that they could be unpredictable, sometimes kind, sometimes cruel. He had carved out a territory for himself in the fields and woods surrounding the abandoned farms and scattered homesteads that dotted the landscape. He was a skilled hunter, catching mice, voles, and the occasional bird, supplementing his diet with scraps he found near the occasional human dwelling. He was a loner, a creature of instinct and necessity, driven by the constant need to survive. But as the days grew shorter and the nights grew colder, a new challenge loomed. A storm was brewing, a major storm, the kind that brought torrential rain, howling winds, and the threat of flash floods to the low-lying areas where Patches often hunted. He sensed the change in the air, the drop in temperature, the growing unease of the birds and other small creatures that shared his world. He knew he needed to find shelter, a safe place to wait out the storm, a place where he could protect himself from the elements. This sets up the two separate characters and foreshadows the coming storm, both literally and figuratively, that will bring them together. The storm hit with a ferocity that surprised even the seasoned residents of Harmony Ridge. The wind howled like a banshee, tearing at the trees, ripping shingles from roofs, and sending debris flying through the air. The rain came down in sheets, turning the fields and roads into muddy rivers, and swelling the creeks and streams to overflowing. Patches, caught in the open when the storm hit, struggled to find shelter. He was soaked to the bone, his fur plastered to his body, his usually keen senses overwhelmed by the wind and rain. He sought refuge under a bush, but the wind-driven rain offered little protection. He knew he had to find a better place, a safer place, or he wouldn't survive the night. He started to run, his paws slipping on the muddy ground, his body buffeted by the wind. He had no destination in mind, just a desperate need to escape the storm's fury. As he ran, he heard a sound, a faint, high-pitched cry, carried on the wind. It was a sound he had never heard before, a sound that pierced through the roar of the storm and tugged at something deep within him. He stopped, his ears pricked, his head cocked, trying to pinpoint the source of the sound. He heard it again, louder this time, a desperate, whimpering cry. He followed the sound, his instincts guiding him, leading him towards a low-lying area near a dirt road, where a drainage ditch had become a raging torrent of muddy water. And there, in the middle of the ditch, clinging precariously to a small, exposed tree root, was a puppy. It was a very young puppy, no more than a few weeks old, its fur matted and soaked, its small body trembling with cold and fear. It was clearly struggling to stay afloat, its tiny paws scrabbling for purchase on the slippery mud, its whimpers growing weaker with each passing moment. Patches, his own discomfort forgotten, felt a surge of protectiveness, a primal urge to help this small, helpless creature. He knew he had to do something, and he had to do it fast. He approached the edge of the ditch, cautiously, testing the muddy bank with his paw. The water was rushing past, swift and dangerous, carrying debris and threatening to sweep the puppy away. He tried to reach the puppy, stretching his body out over the water, his claws digging into the mud, but the puppy was too far away. He couldn't reach it without falling into the torrent himself. He let out a frustrated meow, his tail lashing back and forth, his mind racing, searching for a solution. He knew he couldn't rescue the puppy on his own. He needed help. He needed human help. And he knew where to find it. This sets up Patches' dilemma and his decision to seek help, showcasing his intelligence and compassion. Patches, his decision made, turned and ran, leaving the desperate cries of the puppy behind, but carrying the image of its plight, its vulnerability, in his mind. He ran towards Eleanor's house, the only human dwelling he knew of within a reasonable distance, the only place where he might find the help he needed. He remembered the woman, Eleanor, the one who had lived there. He had observed her from a distance, watching her tend her garden, her gentle movements, her kind eyes. He had sensed a warmth in her, a compassion that had drawn him to her property, even though he usually avoided human contact. He ran through the storm, the wind and rain lashing at his fur, his paws slipping on the wet pavement. He ignored the discomfort, the fear, his only focus on reaching the house, on alerting the woman, on somehow convincing her to follow him, to help him save the puppy. He reached Eleanor's yard, soaked and shivering, and let out a series of loud, insistent meows, scratching at the front door. His cries desperate, urgent, filled with a plea he hoped she would understand. Eleanor, startled by the commotion, opened the door cautiously, peering out into the storm. She saw Patches, the orange cat, his fur plastered to his body, his eyes wide with a frantic energy she had never seen before. "Rusty?" she said, surprised. "What's wrong? What are you doing out in this weather?" Patches meowed again, louder this time, then turned and ran a short distance down the driveway, looking back at her as if urging her to follow. He repeated this several times, his movements frantic, his message clear. "Come with me. Something is wrong." Eleanor, initially hesitant, felt a surge of intuition, a sense that this was more than just a cat seeking shelter from the storm. She recognized the urgency in his behavior, the desperation in his eyes. She trusted his instincts, his unspoken plea for help. She grabbed her raincoat, her boots, and her cane, and stepped out into the storm, following Patches, her heart pounding with a mixture of apprehension and determination. She didn't know what she would find, what danger awaited them, but she knew she had to trust the cat, to follow his lead, to see where he would take her. This moment of trust, of interspecies communication, is crucial to the story's emotional core. Patches led Eleanor along the road, his orange fur a blur against the gray, stormy landscape. He moved quickly, purposefully, occasionally looking back to make sure she was following, his meows piercing through the roar of the wind and rain. Eleanor struggled to keep up, her cane sinking into the mud, her breath coming in ragged gasps. The storm was relentless, the wind whipping at her raincoat, the rain stinging her face. But she pressed on, driven by a growing sense of urgency, a feeling that she was on a mission of vital importance. They reached the clearing and Patches darted towards the muddy ditch, letting out a series of sharp, urgent meows, his eyes fixed on the spot where the puppy was trapped. Eleanor followed, her heart leaping into her throat as she saw the small, brown form clinging precariously to the tree root, the rushing water threatening to sweep it away. "Oh my goodness!" she exclaimed, her voice filled with horror and compassion. She immediately understood Patches' actions, his desperate plea for help, his unwavering determination to save this tiny creature. She felt a surge of admiration for the cat, for his bravery, his empathy, his extraordinary act of interspecies kindness. She assessed the situation quickly, realizing that she couldn't reach the puppy on her own. She needed help, and she needed it fast. She remembered seeing a long, sturdy branch lying near the path, a branch that had fallen from a tree during a previous storm. She told Patches to stay with the puppy, to keep him calm, and she hurried back to retrieve the branch. She returned, her breath coming in ragged gasps, and carefully lowered the branch into the ditch, positioning it so that the puppy could, hopefully, climb onto it. "Come on, little one," she said softly, encouragingly. "You can do it. Climb up." The puppy, initially frightened by the branch, seemed to understand. It whimpered softly, then, with a surge of desperate energy, started to climb, its small paws scrabbling for purchase on the rough bark. Patches, watching intently from the edge of the ditch, let out a series of soft meows, as if encouraging the puppy, urging it on. Slowly, painstakingly, the puppy climbed up the branch, its small body trembling with exhaustion. Eleanor reached out, carefully grasping the puppy, and lifted it out of the ditch, cradling it in her arms. The puppy was covered in mud, shivering and whimpering, but it was alive. Eleanor felt a wave of relief wash over her, a profound sense of gratitude for Patches, for his bravery, his compassion, and his unwavering determination to save this small, helpless creature. She carried the puppy back to her cottage, Patches trotting proudly beside her, as if he understood that he had played a crucial role in the rescue. She cleaned the puppy, dried him with a soft towel, and wrapped him in a warm blanket. She examined him carefully, checking for injuries. He seemed to be unharmed, just exhausted, scared, and very, very hungry. She gave him some warm milk, which he lapped up eagerly, his small body trembling with relief. She decided to name him Lucky, a tribute to his fortunate rescue and a nod to the orange cat who had saved him. As Lucky ate, Eleanor watched Patches, who was sitting a short distance away, observing the puppy with a mixture of curiosity and what seemed like pride. He didn't approach the puppy, didn't try to interact with him, but he kept a watchful eye on him, as if making sure he was safe and comfortable. This scene mirrors the previous story, but it's important to reestablish it in this new context. After Lucky had been fed, cleaned, and wrapped in a warm blanket, he quickly fell asleep, exhausted from his ordeal. Eleanor placed him in a comfortable box lined with soft towels, making sure he was warm and secure. Patches, who had been watching the entire process with quiet intensity, settled down near the box, his eyes fixed on the sleeping puppy. He seemed content, relieved, as if his mission had been accomplished. Eleanor, however, noticed a change in Patches's behavior over the next few days. He was still affectionate towards her, still greeting her with his usual enthusiasm, but he was also restless, agitated, and seemingly preoccupied. He'd spend hours sitting by the window, staring out at the woods, his tail twitching, his ears pricked, as if listening for something, waiting for something. He'd also started to leave the house for longer periods, disappearing for hours at a time, returning with his fur damp and covered in leaves, as if he'd been searching for something. Eleanor was puzzled. She couldn't understand what was driving this new behavior. She wondered if he was missing his freedom, if he was longing to return to his wild life, if he was regretting his decision to seek her help. She tried to reassure him, offering him extra attention, extra treats, extra playtime. But nothing seemed to calm his restlessness, to ease his apparent anxiety. One afternoon, as Eleanor was working in her garden, she saw Patches do something she had never seen him do before. He picked up Lucky, gently, by the scruff of his neck, as a mother cat would carry her kitten. Eleanor gasped, her heart pounding with surprise and a growing sense of understanding. Patches wasn't just caring for Lucky. He was acting like a parent, a surrogate mother, fulfilling a role that went beyond simple friendship or compassion. He carried Lucky out of the house, heading towards the woods, the same woods where he had found him. Eleanor, her curiosity piqued, followed him cautiously, keeping a safe distance, not wanting to interfere with his actions. Patches led her along a familiar path, the same path he had taken when he had first sought her help. He moved with a purposefulness, a determination that she had come to recognize, a sense that he was on a mission. He reached the clearing, the place where the muddy ditch still bore the scars of Lucky's rescue. But he didn't stop there. He continued on, deeper into the woods, following a narrow, overgrown trail that Eleanor had never noticed before. Eleanor, her heart pounding with anticipation, followed, trusting Patches's instincts, believing that he was leading her to something important, something that would explain his restless behavior, his unwavering focus, his seemingly maternal instincts towards the rescued puppy. She sensed that she was on the verge of another discovery, a deeper understanding of Patches's extraordinary nature, a revelation that would further touch her heart and solidify the bond between them. This builds suspense and sets up the crucial scene where Patches finds a mother for Lucky. Patches, carrying Lucky gently in his mouth, led Eleanor deeper into the woods, following a winding, overgrown path that seemed to lead nowhere. Eleanor, despite her age and her reliance on her cane, kept up as best she could, her heart pounding with a mixture of anticipation and apprehension. She trusted Patches implicitly, but she couldn't help but wonder what he was doing, where he was taking them, what he hoped to find. She had assumed that Patches was simply taking Lucky for some fresh air, to show him the outside, perhaps. The air was cool and damp, the scent of pine and damp earth filling her nostrils. The only sounds were the rustling of leaves, the chirping of birds, and the occasional soft whimper from Lucky, who seemed surprisingly calm and content in Patches's grasp. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Patches stopped. He lowered Lucky gently to the ground, placing him near a thicket of bushes, then sat down beside him, his eyes fixed on the dense undergrowth. Eleanor, catching up, peered into the bushes, her eyes slowly adjusting to the dim light. She couldn't see anything, just a tangle of branches, leaves, and shadows. Then she heard it, a soft, whimpering sound, followed by a series of low, rumbling growls. Patches meowed softly, a reassuring sound, and the growls subsided. Slowly, cautiously, a dog emerged from the bushes. It was a medium-sized dog, with a shaggy, brown and white coat, and kind, intelligent eyes. She had several puppies with her, all huddled around, suckling. Eleanor gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. She realized, with a jolt of understanding, what Patches had done. He had found a mother dog, a nursing mother, for Lucky. The mother dog, initially wary of Eleanor, sniffed Patches, then sniffed Lucky, her tail wagging tentatively. She seemed to recognize Lucky's scent, his vulnerability, his need for a mother's care. Patches nudged Lucky towards the mother dog, encouraging him to approach her, to join her litter. Lucky, hesitant at first, seemed to understand. He crawled towards the mother dog, whimpering softly, and she, in turn, licked him gently, welcoming him into her warm embrace. He began to nurse, eagerly, alongside the other puppies, his small body trembling with relief and contentment. Eleanor watched the scene unfold, tears welling up in her eyes. She was overcome with emotion, with awe, with a profound respect for Patches's intelligence, his compassion, his extraordinary ability to not only rescue a puppy in need, but also to find him a mother, a family, a place where he belonged. She realized that Patches's restless behavior, his constant searching, his maternal instincts, had all been driven by a single, powerful purpose: to ensure Lucky's survival, to provide him with the care and nurturing he needed to thrive. She also realized that the mother dog was likely a stray, or perhaps a lost pet, living wild in the woods, struggling to survive and care for her own litter. Patches, in his own way, had not only helped Lucky. He had also helped this mother dog, providing her with an extra mouth to feed, but also, perhaps, with a sense of companionship, a shared responsibility in the challenging task of raising a family in the wild. The surrogate found was not just a random encounter. It was the culmination of Patches's deliberate actions, his intelligent search, and his unwavering determination to provide Lucky with the best possible care. This was the moment that truly touched everyone's hearts, showcasing the depth of Patches' compassion and his extraordinary ability to connect with other creatures, both human and animal. The dog, the mother, belongs to a neighbor who lives about a mile down the street on a farm. Eleanor, after witnessing the heartwarming reunion of Lucky with his surrogate mother and his new siblings, knew she couldn't simply walk away. She couldn't leave this mother dog and her puppies to fend for themselves in the woods. She approached the mother dog cautiously, speaking to her softly, reassuringly. The dog, though wary, allowed Eleanor to approach, sensing her kindness, her genuine concern. Eleanor examined the puppies, checking for injuries, assessing their health. They seemed to be in relatively good condition, considering their circumstances, but they were clearly in need of proper care, of food, shelter, and veterinary attention. She decided to contact her neighbor, Farmer McGregor, who lived about a mile down the road, the only person within a reasonable distance who might be able to help. She explained the situation to Farmer McGregor, describing the mother dog, the puppies, and Patches' extraordinary role in finding them. Farmer McGregor, a gruff but kind-hearted man, was initially skeptical, but when he saw the genuine emotion in Eleanor's eyes, and when he heard the details of Patches' actions, he agreed to help. He drove his truck to the edge of the woods, and together, he and Eleanor carefully gathered the mother dog and her puppies, including Lucky, and transported them to his farm. Farmer McGregor had a large, warm barn filled with hay, and he created a comfortable space for the mother dog and her puppies, providing them with food, water, and a safe place to rest. He examined the mother dog, confirming that she was healthy, though a bit undernourished. He also checked the puppies, confirming that they were all in good condition, thanks to the mother dog's care and Patches' intervention. Then Farmer McGregor revealed something that surprised Eleanor. "You know, Eleanor," he said, "this mother dog, she looks familiar. I think she might be Maggie, Mrs. Henderson's dog. Mrs. Henderson passed away a few months ago, and Maggie ran off. We all searched for her, but we couldn't find her. We assumed the worst." Eleanor was amazed. Mrs. Henderson had been a dear friend, a fellow gardener, and a lifelong animal lover. She had adored Maggie, her faithful companion, and she had been heartbroken when she had disappeared. It turned out that Maggie hadn't been lost or abandoned. She had been pregnant, and she had instinctively sought out a safe place to give birth to her puppies, a place where she could protect them and care for them, away from the dangers of the human world. And Patches, the stray cat, had somehow found her, had recognized her as a potential surrogate mother for Lucky, and had led Eleanor to her, completing a circle of kindness, of compassion, that had spanned across species, across communities, across time. Farmer McGregor agreed to keep Maggie and her puppies, including Lucky, on his farm, providing them with a permanent home, a safe haven, and a loving environment. He also agreed to allow Eleanor to visit them regularly, to maintain her connection to Lucky and to Patches, who, of course, was welcome at the farm anytime. The story of Patches, the orange cat who had rescued a puppy and found him a mother, spread throughout Harmony Ridge and beyond, touching the hearts of everyone who heard it. It was a story that celebrated the power of interspecies friendship, the enduring bonds of compassion, and the extraordinary ways in which animals can surprise us, inspire us, and enrich our lives. Eleanor, though she still cherished her quiet life in her farmhouse, found herself with an expanded family, a network of connections that included not only Patches and Lucky, but also Farmer McGregor, Maggie, and her litter of puppies. She visited the farm regularly, helping to care for the animals, sharing her stories, and enjoying the warmth of companionship and the joy of witnessing the enduring power of love and kindness. Patches spent time in both places, at the farm and at Eleanor's. The expanding family was not just a literal expansion. It was a symbol of the widening circles of compassion, the interconnectedness of life, and the profound impact that a single act of kindness can have, rippling outwards, touching countless lives, and creating a world filled with more love, more understanding, and more hope. And it all began with an orange cat, a desperate puppy, and a storm that brought them together. a perfect storm of circumstances that had led to a truly heartwarming and unforgettable outcome.